I can still hear the tremor in her voice when she finally said the words, even though her expression showed no remorse. We were seated at the dining table, the very one we had carefully selected together when we first moved into the house. I assumed it would be an ordinary evening. Maybe she would vent about her job or talk about her latest fitness phase. Instead, she gently placed her fork down, met my eyes without hesitation and said, "I'm going to live with Anthony. We're expecting a child." Time seemed to freeze. The woman I had centered my entire life around had just ripped the ground out from under me as if it meant nothing. At first, I was convinced it had to be some twisted joke. I actually laughed, waiting for her to join in. She didn't. Her expression remained distant and firm. She meant every word. It felt like my chest had been crushed against stone. Strangely, the first question that escaped my lips wasn't why. It was when. When had our promises stopped meaning anything? When did Anthony, her friend from the office, become more significant than the husband who stood beside her through every hardship? She didn't hesitate. In an even tone, she admitted it had been happening for months and confessed she had grown tired of pretending she wanted a future with me. I wanted to erupt. I wanted to shout until the walls shook. But I didn't. I remained seated, absorbing, it all feeling oddly detached. It wasn't dramatic like in films where the betrayed man overturns furniture or storms out. I stayed composed, perhaps unsettlingly so. That composure seemed to bother her. She must have expected tears, pleas, desperation. Instead, I allowed the silence to stretch between us. Then I asked the one thing that finally made her blink. "And you really believed I wouldn't discover it myself?" For a split second, fear flickered across her face. The reality was, I had known about Anthony for some time, the unexplained late evenings, the sudden obsession with her looks, the way her phone never left her grip. I had been paying attention. Once, I even followed her. I watched as she walked directly into his apartment building. I had been bracing myself for this confrontation, though preparation didn't dull the sting when it finally came. What she hadn't realized was that I was already ahead of her. She thought she was detonating a bomb in my life, but she was merely confirming what I had already put together. She began defending herself, claiming Anthony made her feel alive again. She said he offered the excitement and affection she believed had faded from our marriage. I didn't interrupt. But inside my head, I replayed every sacrifice I had made. Extra hours at work, missed opportunities, the pieces of myself I had set aside to ensure she lived comfortably. I wasn't flawless, but I was faithful. Apparently, faithfulness wasn't enough for her. My silence must have unnerved her because she finally asked, "Aren't you going to say something?" I leaned back in my chair, held her gaze steadily, and replied in a calm voice, "I hope it works out for you. Because while you were building a life with Anthony, I was consulting an attorney." The color drained from her face. She had expected devastation, not preparation. I told her I had collected evidence of the affair. The divorce paperwork was nearly finalized. She would receive only what the law allowed, nothing more. In that instant, her fantasy collapsed. She started crying, not out of remorse, but out of fear. Fear of losing the security and comfort I had provided. Fear that Anthony, the man she viewed as her rescue, might not be so enthusiastic when faced with real-life obligations, rent, expenses, a child on the way. She asked me to reconsider, to at least discuss it further. I simply shook my head. "You made your decision," I told her. "Now you live with it." The following weeks passed in a haze. She gathered her belongings and moved into Anthony's place. I signed the divorce documents without hesitation. Many people assume heartbreak leaves you in pieces, but in my case, it felt strangely liberating. I had already grieved the end of my marriage long before she confessed. By the time she walked out, I was already focused on what came next. Several months later, a mutual acquaintance mentioned that things between her and Anthony weren't as perfect as she had imagined. The weight of financial strain, responsibility, and the reality of a baby on the way had begun to press on him. Whispers suggested he wasn't nearly as devoted as she once believed. That didn't shock me. Men like Anthony thrive in secrecy, but falter when exposed to real life. I didn't celebrate the news. I simply felt closure. She made her choice, and now she had to face it. As for me, I rebuilt my world. I reconnected with friends I had drifted away from. I returned to hobbies I had long abandoned. For the first time in years, I experienced genuine freedom. My response that evening left her speechless, but it also released me. Sometimes true strength isn't about fighting to hold someone in your life. Sometimes it's about recognizing when to release them. And when I finally let go, I understood something clearly. I hadn't lost anything, she had.